Hi students, welcome to another session. So far we are dealing with Unit 4, that is Human Development. In this session, we have discussed the different stages of development, meanings, and in the earlier session we have been discussing about stages. In that we discussed infancy, childhood, and dealing with adolescence. We have seen physical development in adolescence, and now we will continue the session in that adolescent and complete it. Okay. So in that adolescent, we have seen the term adolescence, the physical development, and how the characteristics develop in in terms of physical body, and the changes we can observe, the age differences between the students. You can see the individuals in the boys, such as that is like 12 or 13. In girls it can be 10 to 11, and it also varies from individual to individual. In the same way, we have seen other things which the education, the awareness, need of awareness is also discussed in the earlier session. So next, we continue with the part that is cognitive development in during adolescence. During adolescence thought becomes more abstract, logical, idealistic. They become more capable of examining their own thoughts, other thoughts, and what others are thinking about them. So during the adolescence, the main thing that people look is identity. They need attention. They has to be highlighted. They have to be recognized among a group. This is the main characteristic of adolescence, and the thinking patterns also change. They tend to develop from dependent to independent. Adolescents developing ability to reason gives them a new level of cognitive and social awareness. And as a childhood, we have some dependence, but in the adolescence, it is like the 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 group also increases the thinking. Even in the earlier sessions, we have discussed Piaget cognitive development theory, that even we have performed an activity where three jars and the I think a liquid transferring from one jar to another jar, and observe the difference between a child and an uh, like in a age group. Piaget believed that formal operational, like regular thinking patterns, will be developed by the age 11 and 15. During this stage, adolescent thinking expands beyond actual concrete experiences, and they begin to think more in abstract terms and reason about them. They can think in a separate manner, not as a whole, but you can recall Gestalt way of thinking. They can separate uh, that idea and think abstractly. It is not like a whole collective way of making decision or taking any step. Okay. So in addition to this abstract, adolescence thought is also idealistic. Like it is, uh, you can say it as very clear, very clear thinking. Adolescents begin to think about ideal characteristic for themselves and others, and compare themselves and others with these ideal standards. They can have a role model and start behaving like that role model, and also they also have some standard for themselves, and they try to exhibit them. For example, they may think what an ideal parent is like, and compare their parents with these ideal standards, like in the friends parents, like you are not buying things like the other parents do, like this set some standards and try to uh, make comparison. This may at times make adolescents wonder which of new found ideal standard they should adopt. Even it is like some confusion that is created between themselves because of this comparison. In contrast, the trial and error approach used by children in earlier stages of development, adolescent thinking becomes more systematic in solving problems. That is what the Piaget in the earlier slide they discussed. Their thinking levels become some standard. They think possible courses of action. What is the result of this action? Why something is happening the way it is, and systematically seek solutions. It is not like an instructional method. They start doing some practicals and observe things. Piaget called this type of logical thinking hypothetical deductive reasoning. That is, in the earlier sessions, in the past units of first unit, we have done deductive and inductive reasoning. In this manner, when there is when there is no particular solution, they start doing things and infer results, and then come to the conclusions. The logical thought also influences the development of moral reasoning. Social rules are not considered as absolute standards, and moral thinking shows some flexibility. So, in adolescence, particularly, they start having their own rules, and they also start working on their own standards. They have some experimental way of behavior. They question everything, they challenge everything. The adolescent recognizes alternative moral courses, explores options, and then decides on a personal moral code. They observe, they follow, and they decide. This is a very important point how an adolescent behaves. For example, should I smoke as everyone I know does? Is it ethical to copy answers in the examinations? These are general things which happen during the adolescence. These are the questions. This also lends the possibility of adolescents not following society's norms if they conflict with personal code of ethics. Like personal, it is like a personal choice. There, the both options are available in the society. Like some people smoke and some people don't. They say it is bad for health. It is it is just they ignore it. Ignorance and consideration or an alert. And during this pandemic situation, using the mask, it is a, even though it is mandatory, people make a choice in it. Like it is like the personal code of ethics they frame. For example, individuals at this age might participate in a protest march for a cause rather than adhere and conform college norm. They also oppose, that is what it is, opposing the standards than following the standards. Why should we? Why should this happen? Adolescents also develop a special kind of egocentrism. It is like self. In the earlier, it is like personal code of ethics. According to David Elkind, imaginary audience and personal fable are two components of adolescence egocentrism. That is individualistic. I am this. I have to be identified, recognized. This is one type of egocentrism. And David Elkind, it is like also we have some imaginary audience. We prepare, we model ourselves for identification. That is what I have to have some people to to recognize me. So these are the things which will be happening during that adolescence. Imaginary audience is adolescents believe that others are as preoccupied with them as they are about themselves. Okay, this is the explanation for that. They are being watched. They are being concentrated. It is like giving some self attention. They seek attention in that manner. They feel like someone is spying on them. Someone is observing how they are, what they are doing, like that. They imagine that people are always noticing them, are observing each and every behavior of theirs. This is what we discussed. Imagine a boy who thinks that all will notice the ink spot on his shirt, or a girl with a pimple feels. All people would think how bad her skin is. Yeah, this is a major problem for adolescents. Like they concentrate more on that physical aspects. In the earlier we discussed that is it is different from individual to individual. It is okay to be different, but these people set standards comparing to like the thin body. There are many factors which affect these conditions, but they do not accept that. It takes time to get adopted with what uh, the real world is. And even the examples given are ink spot and pimples on a face, or ink spot on the shirt. They feel like it is awkward to have ink spot on the shirt. Okay, it is imaginary audience which makes them extremely self-conscious. The personal fable is part of adolescence egocentrism that involves their sense of uniqueness. It is the identity. Adolescent sense of uniqueness make them think that no one understands them or their feeling. Generally, this happens between the parents and this adolescent, that they are unable to understand their thinking, their needs, and uh, they will have requirements. They inform to parents, but parents say this is not necessary. Why you want to waste money or like that? But they feel like they are not understand, but it is very required thing. For example, an adolescent girls think that none can sense the hurt she feels because of being betrayed by a friend. Uh, it can be like some relationship issues we have to consider from the point of the student. It is quite common to hear the adolescent say to the parents, "You don't understand me." This is the conflict of differences which we have discussed between the parents and the children. Like these adolescent students will not make any choices that they have the independence of. It is quite common to hear that the adolescents say to the parents, "You don't understand me." So, like you can have a difference that these adolescents have a peculiar behavior having the audience that even the recognition which have been discussing so far, they have a conflict. They are in the stage of creating their own standards, personal ethics, and all. To retain their sense of personal uniqueness, they may weave stories filled with fantasy around them to create a world that is away from reality. Like they work, it is very important that these students have a tendency to achieve anything. They have the most desired energy that they can create anything in the world. This type of sense will, like generally as parents who have little experience about the life, will advise them will advise them. But what happens with the adolescents is that they oppose. that we know we can achieve anything. This is the conflict that draws the adolescents to fight, or it is like the differences. Personal fables. Fables is like in short stories, often part of adolescent diaries. They have their own like way of behavior. The next to it is forming an identity. You must have sought answers to questions such as who am I? Which subject should I study? Do I believe in God? The answers to all these questions involve the quest to define one's sense of self or the search for identity. Identity is who you are and what your values, commitments, and beliefs are. The primary task of adolescence is to establish an identity separate from parents. That is what in adolescence they seek identity. During adolescence, a detachment process enables the individual to develop a personalized set of beliefs and personalized ethics, which we have been discussing, uniquely her or his own. In the process of achieving an identity, the adolescent could experience conflict with parents and within herself or himself. Here it is like they are uh, working on the identity part, but here they also need to work on explaining themselves, the individual, the audience which they have created. They have to convince themselves that they are thinking in a correct manner. In the process of achieving an identity, the adolescent could experience conflict. Yeah, this is what we discussed. Those adolescents who can cope with the conflicting identities develop a new sense of self. Like they think what is correct, what is wrong, what is ideal to the world, etc. All these things will make the individual to set new standards. That is where for every generation new set of standards will be developed. Like for example, using digital devices, using mobile phones, using vehicles, and uh, the transformation of information, the way it has developed has been changing, because these set of standards do change from time to time, from generation to generation, like this. Adolescents who are not able to cope with this identity crisis are confused. Like if they are able to do it, if not, they will be in a state that it is identity, role versus confusion. That is what Erickson. In the earlier, we discussed this Erickson stages also. This identity confusion, according to Erickson, can lead to individual isolating themselves from peers and family, or they may lose their identity in the crowd. Like they will go in a rat race. They do not have own thinking or capability what they want to do, and they live like very common, or they also feel like they do not have any sense of identity. Adolescents, on one hand, may desire independence but may also be afraid of it and shows great deal of dependence on their parents. This is also we discussed that adolescents at some stage will have some, they want independence, but at the same time it is a transformative stage. It is a age of conflict. It is an age of decision making. In this conflict they will have some trial and error method. They will have some practical knowledge, they will have some experiences. All these experiences will shape up the individual. Rapid fluctuations between self confidence and insecurity are typical of this stage. Adolescents may at one time complain of being treated like a baby, whereas on the other occasion, they may seek comfort by depending on their parents. So this is also example related to self-dependence. Seeking an identity involves searching for continuity and sameness in oneself, greater responsibility, and trying to get a clear sense of who one is, that is an identity. it is like developing like an individual. All these, it is a stage of conflict, but it is an age of transformation, both physical and cognitive development and identity development. It is like developing as an individual. In the next session, we will continue with this, with the part of this, and let us conclude this session for now, and we will continue this session in the next part. Thank you so much. If you have any queries, please write to the mail ID. Have a great day.